So what do you do with 100 pounds of peaches? You can chop them up and make peach mash. I've got about, I think, 2.5 gallons in this bucket, and probably 4.5 in that one, and 4.5 in that one. So, assuming I get, let's say, 4 gallons here, that'd be 13 total. And I can probably get 8 or 9 gallons of wine out of that. It would have been thoroughly impossible to eat this much fruit. But I've had this mash fermenting now for about 2 weeks, so it's getting close to the point I could stop this primary fermentation and move it over for secondary fermentation. But I'll stir the cap to keep the brew mixed up good. I see just a little bit of bubbling, so yeah, it's getting close to time to siphon this out. I'm ready for the next step now. Gonna take a ladle and scoop out the surface of the mash here and put that in this cheesecloth in a funnel, and that's the container I'll use for my secondary ferment. Last night it took me about 5 hours to draw all that pulp from the primary fermenting bucket using a ladle, and I finished about midnight. It's 8 in the morning the next day. This is my secondary. I did add 3/4 pound of sugar because that primary had been sitting for close to 2 weeks, so the yeast had almost completely eaten all of the existing sugar that was in the primary. And I wanted enough fermentation to be sure to fill up the air gap with carbon dioxide. And I believe that's happening. I'm getting some foam here at the surface, so secondary fermentation is going. So I still have a couple more buckets of mash to work through, and I'm going to try and do another one of these 5-gallon containers tonight. Got my siphon stick ready, so I want to pick up the liquid, but not the sludge at the bottom, and I'll move that over to some smaller bottles. Good morning, it's Saturday, August 13. I've had the secondary juice in additional ferment now for probably 4 more days. I added about 1/4 cup of sugar to those two, and I'm kind of surprised how much fermentation resulted from that. And you can see that it's bloating these jugs, and I should burp these off, let some of the carbon dioxide out. Ideally, I should have more airlocks like that one, but this will do. This jug has the lees, and I added a whole cup of sugar to this. That's not very appetizing looking, but I can see some streaks of bubbles coming up through here and some change of color as this gradually separates. And if it doesn't separate quickly, I can always put that in the refrigerator, and the yeast will die off and settle to the bottom. So I'll probably get a few inches of wine out of that. This is my larger jug that it's been in secondary ferment probably for over a week now. I think most of the fermentation's done, so it's just a waiting game with this. Although I will take a ladle, perhaps midweek, and try and scoop off some of what's floating on the top. If I'm satisfied that these are clean, I might add some juice into there. Today is Sunday, August 28th, and I've had this large jug of peach juice now in secondary fermentation for probably about 2 weeks, and I think the fermentation is mostly over with. I'm starting to notice just a little bit of scum on the surface, so it's time to rack this off into separate bottles. I had some fruit matter floating on the surface, and I was not able to use this ladle after all. It would not fit in the opening. So instead, I made my own tool to do that. This is a piece of window screen, and I simply screwed it onto the bottom of a stick, and I can stick it down in there and fish out the fruit matter that was floating on the surface. So it's ready to take a siphon and get the good juice out and start putting it in bottles for racking off. I still have these from earlier, and I did add a little more sugar to some of these to assist the fermentation, but everything looks good. It smells clean. It's still kind of cloudy. I wouldn't call this wine yet. So the nature of winemaking is you have to be very patient, but given enough time, they will clear out. This will be my final wine update for the year. It's Tuesday, September 20, so probably about 4 weeks or so since the last time I made an update. And at this point, these have nearly stopped fermenting. There's just a little bit, and I can still burp these and get just a small amount of gas, but if I keep an eye on them, it won't get out of control. I find that the wine ferments just fine in these small bottles, and some of this is of different ages, but this bottle would be the oldest. And you can begin to see some clearing in this. Maybe if I carry it closer to sunlight. There, that's a little better. So I've started drinking it, and I'll admit it's kind of a strong flavor. I actually mix it with a little bit of Sprite or Mountain Dew, but for free wine, I can't complain. I still have some of these bottles with a little bit of apple juice, and it does make a slightly different color. But overall, I'm satisfied. It's kind of an interesting drink. It doesn't taste exactly like grape wine does. It's almost like sort of a cocktail in a way. But that's one of the rewards for having my own peach tree and spending the time to de-stone all those peaches and ferment them. So next year, if I want to make the effort, I might be able to get more wine than this. So I'll get back to avocado content in my next video, and see you all later.